And we offered obeisances, and Kirtanananda said, Prabhupada, this is Shrutakirti. He's going to be your servant. It's 5 a.m, and there's only the desk lamp where Prabhupada would translate. And Prabhupada just looked and went, He said he's a very good cook, but he doesn't know how to massage. Prabhupada said anyone can massage. That was a stretch of the truth. That wasn't true. I found out later on. He was very particular about everything. Not just massaging, not just cooking, everything you did. He was very particular. The first time I shaved his head, we'd do his head with electric buzzers. He introduced me to the buzzers. And he said, so now you grab the buzzer, you turn it on, and you go zzz. You turn it off, you go to the next spot, turn it on, zzz. Turn it off, go to the next spot, turn it on, zzz, because it would get hot. Prabhupada didn't like it. No, he said, you keep a cool head. Huh? He massaged his body, sandalwood oil on the head. Always want to keep cool brain. Keep your brain cool. Anyway, I offered instances. We sat up, and Prabhupada looked at me. His very first word to me as his servant, he got up, he said, follow me. He meant that literally. Forever and ever. Figure that's all we do. We try to follow him. That's our business. It was the most perfect instruction. He meant it very simply. Took me many, many years to understand. He meant it very, very not so simply, to follow him. And I followed him out the door, walked about 1 meter. He said, wait here. And I waited. He had his lota that he grabbed from under the desk. He walked further behind the bushes. After a few minutes, he came back, handed me the lota. He gave me my next first service. Wash this with the soil and water, put it back under my desk. So my very first service was cleaning the lota. That was the first. That was my very first service. Follow me. You're cleaning my lota. That's who you are. I went to pass. Now you clean the lota, put it back. 2.5 years with him. I never had to clean the lota again. There were armies. Prabhupada would go on the morning walk, generally with mostly his male disciples, and the ladies would stay back and polish his cooker, polish his lota, make flower vases, clean the room, clean the bathroom, fresh towels, fresh sheets every day. All those things were going on. But his first service to me was clean my lota. I learned very quickly what my business was as Prabhupada's servant. I often say being a servant is a pujari. You're just a pujari. But your deity, he moves and he chastises. You can hear him. You don't have to speculate. I think I see a smile today. Today not so smiling. No. You'll see a smile or you'll see a frown. You'll hear him chastise you, his personal servant. So anyway, I just wanted to get a few more devotees here for you too, because these are both wonderful, wonderful devotees who have been with us for a very, very long time, and originally out of England. Bhagavad-Gita, his wife Sarva Mangala. Australian, I'm sorry, it's Aussie. But they're here to tell us some of their experience with Srila Prabhupada. Please welcome Sarva Mangala and Bhagavad-Gita Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Firstly, before anything else, I'd like to say a few words of personal appreciation about this whole festival. It's quite overwhelming, actually. The quality of the organization, the standard of the prasadam, and the attitude of the devotees here towards us as Prabhupada disciples, is quite, as I say, quite overwhelming. So I just wanted to say that to begin with. I was one of those devotees that was left behind as Prabhupada wanted when the temple opened. Every zone to leave 2 devotees on a 3-month rotation, and he wanted that to go on. Well, with my understanding at the time, was pretty much in perpetuity, but I was led to understand that was really just for a time to get things established. Because I think, as Gananava was saying the other day, and as Narottam was saying, there weren't that many devotees, 10, 15 devotees here while the temple was being built. And then suddenly, from one day to the next, there was 3 altars, a service, a restaurant, a guest house. And Prabhupada gave 3 instructions at that time. He said, you establish a first-class standard of deity worship here. You have the 24-hour kirtan, and you have feeding of the pilgrims, the sadhus. The peas, yeah. So originally, 35 zones left 2 devotees, so we had about 75, 80 devotees here. And that went on for 3 months, and things like the 24-hour kirtan were pretty easy to organize, and we had a lot of devotees at each kirtan and a lot of enthusiastic chanting. Then, I came from Australia, and so in those days, Australian Commonwealth citizens and British citizens didn't need a visa to stay in India. You could come as long as you were registered with the FRO, you could stay as long as you liked. So Gopal Krishna Maharaj, then Prabhu, he said, well, why don't you write to your GBC and see if he'll let you stay? Which I did, and he did. He let me stay. So at the end of that 3 months, I stayed, and 70-odd devotees left, and only about 30 came in the second 3 months. And then by the end of the second 3 months, I don't think anyone came. It was down to... So things were pretty tight with manpower and getting things done. And that's another thing that impresses me so much about the standard of the service of the devotees here. Because in those days, people's attitude to ISKCON was quite different than it is now. And we had quite a lot of young Indian men who were here. And they well, I don't want to cast aspersions on anyone, but they didn't come from very good backgrounds, a lot of them. And they were a lot of them were very eager to get a trip to America or get a Polaroid camera or a white wife. So it was kind of difficult to organize things. And that leads me to my first little story of something that happened with Srila Prabhupada. I was one of my first services was temple commander, and I had a group of boys who they definitely did not want to do service. So getting them together to do anything was like, in those days, things were a little different with the guest house building, because right now you have the outer the outer part of the guest house is still functioning, and Govinda's restaurant takes up the whole ground floor, but originally that was an atrium, and there was another set of rooms inside, and that was the Brahmachari ashram. So getting these boys together was like up and down stairs, running around trying to find them and hustling them down into usually to clean the temple. And that's where this story starts, because there was one particular young man who was probably the most difficult person to get anything done with. And the first time I got him into the temple room, in those days there was still a big, what do you call it, scaffold? It was a very, it's like a horse thing. It was very high, went all the way up. It was used for putting all the chandeliers up and getting all the little teardrop things on them. But it only had wheels about this big. It should have had wheels like that to move it around. But it just had wooden wheels, thick clog-type wheels. So you had to be very careful about the way you maneuvered it around the temple room, around the mandap. So I asked this boy to, can you help move this? And he just grabbed it and dragged it across the floor. And it made big marks in the marble, and that made me look at him a little sideways, thinking, well, what are you here for? So anyway, as weeks passed, things started going missing from devotees' rooms. Devotees would hang up their dhotis on the roof to get them dry. And then devotees had tape recorders and watches and money and cameras and so forth. And things were going missing. So Prabhupada came on a visit. And the first morning he was here on a morning walk. We were coming back from the morning walk, walking down by the side of the temple. Prabhupada used to circumambulate before he went in to greet the deities. And just as we were getting to the middle door, Akshayananda Swami, who was the temple president at the time, he said to Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, some devotees are stealing things. Srila Prabhupada just said very quietly, he said, they're not devotees, they're thieves. And just as he said that, this young man stepped out of the middle door of the temple room, and he immediately froze and looked very sheepish, and he grabbed the lobes of his ears and went like this to Prabhupada. Prabhupada just glanced at him and walked on. A few steps down, he said, that man is a thief. And I was like, yes. And then he walked on a little further and he said, and his father before him was a thief. And his father before him was a thief. And then he chuckled and he said, in this way, evam parampara praptam. So I was just bouncing around from one service to another temple commander, and then I was working with Akshayananda Swami as his personal assistant. And by about 6 months down the road, there was quite a dire financial situation. So next thing I knew, I was traveling all over North India, all over UP, northern part of MP, and then Rajasthan with Akshayananda Swami and Prasanatma. And that was quite austere. We had in those days what was called the Fairchild projector, which was like a TV monitor that folded up into quite a large case. And we had one cassette player, which was the original Hare Krishna film. And we had a big oversized Samsonite briefcase full of books. And the three of us trying to get onto pedal rickshaws. It was always a fight between Prasanatma and myself to see who'd get on first to sit next to Maharaj, because the other one had to sit on the back, on that little wooden seat at the back, and try and hold the Fairchild projector while we bounced around. That was quite an experience. But then I just have a couple of stories of exchanges with Srila Prabhupada after that time. As you all know, Hari Sori, I think he mentioned he came to Vrindavan, I think, late in 75. And it was kind of a whirlwind experience. He was here, and then he was on his way to Calcutta to become the temple president there, and then he dropped into Delhi where Prabhupada was, and there was nobody to do Srila Prabhupada's massage, so Hari Sori got picked up to do the massage and ended up staying with Srila Prabhupada for the next 18 months. But sometime early in 76, when Srila Prabhupada visited, Hari Sori came down with a really heavy fever, and he couldn't do the massage. So by that time, the Gurukul construction was underway, and up where that building is opposite the Samadhi, against the wall that was going up of the Gurukul, there was a little snack bar where we used to get our French fries. So I was up there one morning having my little French fry snack, and next thing, Harikesh Swami was standing next to me. He says, Bhagavad-Gita, you have to go and get a shower and come to Prabhupada's quarters because you have to do his massage today. And I just sort of, yeah, okay. I thought he was kidding. So I started eating my chips again, and he said, no, I'm serious. You have to go there now. So I got the message, and I raced down, got my shower, got back up I went into Hari Sori's room first because I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So he gave me a quick rundown on how you massage Prabhupada, how you massage Srila Prabhupada. So, okay. So then he took me into Prabhupada's bedroom, and Prabhupada was talking with Harikesh and Akshayananda Swami, and I think Gopal Krishna Maharaj or Jagadish was here at the time, and he was just talking with them. He didn't even look at me. I sat down, and then he finished his conversation with them, and they left. And Hari Sori was there, and he said, he introduced me to Prabhupada. He said, he's going to do your massage while I'm sick. And Prabhupada said, does he know the art? And Hari Sori says, well, he says he does, because I'd done a little bit of massage here and there. He said, okay. So then you started Srila Prabhupada's massage by massaging his head with, as Srila Kirti Prabhu was saying, with sandalwood oil. In a second. So Prabhupada, to take his massage, would sit cross-legged on the floor. And you do the massage starting with his head and then his back and then each arm, and then he would extend one leg and you'd massage that, and then the other leg, and then his torso, the front of his torso. So I knew Hari Sori had just briefed me on that. And he gave me a little bottle of sandalwood oil, a little bottle of mustard oil. Sandalwood oil for the head, mustard oil for the body. So we get started. We get started, and I started on his head. So we used to get this man come to shave our heads. Once a week, he'd come to the temple and sit there, and devotees would get their head shaved. And he'd always give you a little massage, like they do the stuff on your head. And just hold that in. So I started rubbing Prabhupada's head, and then I started doing stuff like that. And Prabhupada was like, oh. And he looked at Hari Sori, he said, he knows the art. I was just winging it the whole way. So then Hari Sori left because he wasn't well. And I was alone with Srila Prabhupada doing his massage. And I was massaging his back. And at Harisaw, he said, Prabhupada likes a firm massage. So I was massaging him really firmly. And he had when you're massaging his back, he puts his hands on the floor and just leads forward. So as I was massaging him, he started to drop off to sleep a little. And he said, oh, this is good. Sleep is coming. So I was getting really like, well, I got this down. I thought, I'm pretty sharp. So I went on with the whole massage and completed it. And then at the end of the massage, you would put a little mustard oil in Prabhupada's left palm, and he would massage his ears and his nose and so on. And while he was doing that, you go into Prabhupada's bathroom, which was off the bedroom, and it was a triangular room. And the spigots for the water were behind the door on the right as you went in. And there was a little hand basin on that wall about 8 or 10 feet from the door. So the servant's job was to go in, and he had 3 very large brass buckets. And you'd fill one with hot water, one with cold water, and leave the other one empty, and Prabhupada would mix the water to the temperature he wanted and have his bath. So I'd just finished doing that, and Prabhupada came into the bathroom. And he went over to the little hand basin and had a little mirror, and he was looking at his teeth. And I stepped to the doors. And I said, will there be anything else, Srila Prabhupada? He said, no. So I stepped out, and I closed the doors, and I threw the bolt on the door. You know, these doors where you throw the bolt. And so I was standing there for just a split second, and it's just kind of like in slow motion in my mind. I just locked Prabhupada in his bathroom. And at that moment, he was at the other side of the door, and he was pulling on it. And so I started to try and pull the bolt. Every time I'd pull, he'd pull, so it'd jam. And this was going on and I didn't realize it, but by the time I finally got the bolt clear, I was down on my knees. And there was Prabhupada looking down at me. I thought fire was going to come out of his eyes. He was so angry. And I just started blubbering. I'm Srila Prabhupada. I'm sorry. It was just a mistake. I didn't. And he just went like that. So away I went. But that was something that also, the aftermath of that was something that really, really impressed me about Srila Prabhupada, in that he was really angry at me. At that moment, he was really angry, justifiably. But anyway, the massage was a 2-item thing, because you'd have to go in the evening and then go with Srila Prabhupada up to his 4-poster bed out on the back veranda upstairs with a mosquito net around it, and massage his legs while he slept. So I had to report for duty again later in the evening. And I came into the room, and I came and sat down. There were a few devotees there. It was the end of a darshan. And I sat down, and he looked at me, and he gave me the biggest smile, as if nothing had happened. Nothing had happened. So then we went upstairs, and that was a real challenge, because this is like 10 o'clock at night. Everything's shut down. It's everybody's asleep, and you're alone there with Prabhupada, just having to keep he liked firm pressure on his legs, holding, gripping, and pressing up and down his legs while he slept. And that was another thing that really impressed me at that time, the way Prabhupada slept. And I saw this later in 1977 when I was in Delhi, and he came through a few times. Anyway, he got up on his bed, And there was quite a stack of pillows. He didn't lie down. He just leant back about 45 degrees. He just leant back and he was asleep. He was asleep. So for 2 hours, I'm doing this, and I was falling asleep. And then all of a sudden, he just sat up. You know, if you've been asleep, you stretch, and he just sat up. He said, "Come on, we're going." There was no sense of sleep in his eyes or anything. He just went to sleep. He woke up, got up, went on with it. So anyway, I went in the next morning to do his massage, and I got to the same point in that procedure where I'm at the doors, and I said to him, "Will there be anything else, Srila Prabhupada?" And he was looking in his mirror, and he gave me a really stern look. He said, "Yes." And then again, this big smile came on his face. He said, "Don't lock the door." So off I went. So that was a real privilege to be able to do that. I think that went on for about 10 days. So after that, Srila Prabhupada, he knew me and I knew him. So I guess it would have been, yeah. I guess it would have been 6 months later. By that time, I was what was jokingly called the Sankirtan leader. And we were just about to head off on a traveling program. And it was around 4 in the afternoon. And in those days, Prabhupada's rooms are not like they are now. The veranda wasn't filled in. It was an open veranda. And then the ante-room to the darshan room hadn't been knocked through so that other big room is open at the back. It was just a little cubicle room where the secretary used to sit and the guard used to sit on the veranda. So in the afternoon, everyone was asleep. And I knew Prabhupada would have had his little nap and he would be in his darshan room chanting japa. So I just knocked on the door. Sorry? Too long? This will take a minute. Yeah, always a heckler somewhere. Anyway, I went in and Prabhupada was sitting on his little asana in the corner chanting japa, and I walked right up and paid my obeisance and sat down by him on the floor. And he kept chanting for a minute or two, and then he stopped and he looked at me and gestured his head as if to say, "What do you want?" So I said, "Well, we're just going on traveling Sankirtan, Srila Prabhupada." And he bucked right up. He said, "Oh, where are you going? What are you doing?" And he wanted to know everything about it. So I told him what we were doing. And then there was nothing else to say. And he just started chanting japa again. And after a couple of minutes, he said to me, "You just chant your rounds every day and chant your gayatris and everything will come." And then he said, "Just like drops of water on a stone." And with his finger, his index finger on the little table, he went drip, 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 rubbed the table. He said, "Soon a hole is coming." Then he gestured to his books behind him and he said, "Just like these books," he said, "every day, little translating. Some days, hardly one sentence." And then he opened his eyes wide and said, "So many books are coming." So I took that as a valuable little lesson. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Jaina Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha. Okay, I came to India in the beginning of 75, and Bombay was my home actually. So when it was the installation, most of the devotees were very keen to go. And I was a bit naive. And some of us said we'd stay behind to look after Radha Rasa Bihari. So I actually missed the installation. But it was nice to be with Radha Rasa Bihari. My service was a pujari and going out cultivating relationships with people who were going to donate for the temple, for the new temple. So I loved being in Bombay, but I won't get into that too much. But I'll just say that I always tried to get to be in Prabhupada's association if possible. And is that better? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So he gave darshan most nights, and I was always so impressed by how Srila Prabhupada was with the guests and how kind he was to everyone. And sometimes he'd ask me to do something like give them prasadam. And I was always praying that one day I could be Prabhupada, in my next life maybe be Prabhupada's body servant. So I used to watch the servants like hawks, and I picked up quite a few tips of how to do things. Anyway, I really loved being in Bombay. I loved my service. But one time, after the installation, I got to go to Vrindavan for a week because I'd missed the installation. They gave me a little break. And that was the first time I entered into Vrindavan. It was really magical. I took the train to Mathura, and then a real slow journey on with a horse on a tonga. Yeah. It was early evening, and it was so beautiful entering into Vrindavan at that time of night. And in those days, you didn't hear Bollywood or any mundane sounds. All I could hear was the sound of chanting and mridangas playing, and I'm sure you remember, some of you will remember those times. And it was really magical. And the smell of the night blooming jasmine, it was really overwhelming entering into Vrindavan Dham. So I didn't know very much. I'd been a devotee about at that time 4 years, and I was just given some service while I was there. I did the fruit offering, and then made a life patron because I'd had that service in Bombay, and then I went back. And I never went anywhere. And when we were in Bombay, Prabhupada said, you don't need to go outside the gates. You don't need to go anywhere. So I didn't even know that I could have gone and visited the other temples. And I remember on the last day, I just ran down the road to Madan Mohan temple and paid my obeisances from a distance. And that was my first experience of Vrindavan. then back in Bombay, unfortunately, after a little while, and I was so attached to my service, loved going preaching. Giriraj Maharaj trained me up to cultivate some of his contacts, and we got to go on a lot of engagements with Srila Prabhupada. And then suddenly, I won't go into detail, but all the brahmacharinis had to leave Bombay, and I was devastated. And we had to go straight away. So I got a third class, what's it called? That third
class unreserved.
Yeah, a third class unreserved ticket. And you're kind of sitting there with all water on the floor and I think a few animals, and it was really rough. And I was so devastated that I had to leave Radha Rasa Bihari. And I was just writing a poem to Radha Rasa Bihari and wondering why this was happening. And then when I got to Bombay, in Vrindavan, because I could type, I got the temple president needed a secretary. So straight away I got my own room, which was kind of quite a luxury in those days. And it even had a little wall of bricks with a tap. So you had your own private shower, which was also a luxury, because everybody was kind of huddled up doing, it wasn't very luxurious in the ashram at that time. So, and also that room overlooked the upstairs of Srila Prabhupada's quarters. So I could see Srila Prabhupada. Well, in the daytime, he'd be sometimes writing or recording things. I remember one time there's this wind called the Lu. Some of you will have experienced it. It was said to be very unhealthy and dangerous and not good to be out in the Lu. And I was very cautious the way I looked out. There was a little bit of a clay, there was a little bit of a cement balcony. So, usually wouldn't let anybody see that I was peeping out. And I could see Prabhupada when the Lu came, and it was quite boisterous, and Prabhupada just kept on translating, and it was quite, I don't know, it must have been very uncomfortable for him. And I saw Upendra running out and trying to get Prabhupada to come in, but he stayed out for a long time, still translating. And then I was close friends with Vishwadevi from Bombay, and I confidentially told her that I could see Prabhupada. At risk of criticism, we felt like we were his daughters. We were very concerned because he wasn't well. And in the evening, we made sure our light wasn't on, and we peeped out over the balustrade to see if Prabhupada was moving around. We could see him in bed, and we were so worried that he wasn't well, and it's a very personal thing. I'm sure some people won't approve, but we loved him, and we were really worried. Just one more thing that was very special. Going under the neem tree in the morning for kirtan when Prabhupada wasn't well. And there were quite a lot of people that used to come and visit. And I remember being like, on guard, I hope none of them try to touch Prabhupada's feet. We're really fierce. somehow thinking we had to stop anybody touching Prabhupada's feet in case they got bad or got their karma on top of not being well. And then the very last time I got to see Srila Prabhupada was in Delhi. I'd been sent to Delhi by Tamal Krishna Maharaj. My husband now was the temple president there, and I was sent to be the pujari. And when Prabhupada was leaving for the West, Bhagavad-Gita was it took me along with to say goodbye to Srila Prabhupada. He was in a car. He was very sick, and he was lying down in the back of the car. And I know Bhagavat had a very kind of personal experience with Prabhupada saying goodbye and telling him he'd never leave him. And that was the last time I saw Srila Prabhupada as well. So and my feeling that I'm left with is that Srila Prabhupada is always accessible. You know, it might seem naughty that you did this, you did that, or I was always taking milk upstairs or vegetables upstairs in Bombay so that I, might get a chance to serve Prabhupada. And that came up. I did get those opportunities. And I did get opportunities to do some of the things that the servants did. And so that's a message that I always say to younger devotees, that Prabhupada is accessible, always will be. And don't be afraid to pray for what you want, and Krishna somehow will reciprocate, because Prabhupada also always reciprocates. Hare Krishna. Hope we didn't go on too long.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much. Next we have Satyanarayana Prabhu. Where is Satyanarayana Prabhu? Right here. He was here with the early opening, the pre-opening at that time and before, and he's going to speak about that at this time. Please welcome Satyanarayana Prabhu. And then hopefully we can want to hear from Srimati. Srimati is here. She'll be speaking next. So we've been trying to get her here for the last.
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Tanamane Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nirvasesha Shunyavari Paschatya Deshi Tarane. So just setting the scene a little bit, I came to India in February of 1974, which was about 15 months or so before the opening of the Krishna Balaram Mandir. And I'm going to try to explain why, at least in my life, I felt it was relevant for me to speak because of wonderful experiences we had with Srila Prabhupada, where he brought something else to the experience of the opening, even before the opening. So in Delhi at the old temple, I had a chance to cook for Srila Prabhupada, actually just cook chapatis and bring them into his, it was almost like a tent he had on the roof of the temple with like a canvas door. And I would bring the hot puffed up chapatis in. And I remember the first time I did it, the focus, the intensity of his focus on taking prasadam stunned me. And I was just standing there after giving, and forgot to give obeisances, and then he just looked at me and gave the little nod, like, you can go now. And I had this vision that it's like in these films of generals in World War II in the deserts, you know, in their tents, coming up with strategies, like war strategies, famous Patton, and I felt that Srila Prabhupada had this intensity of ideas and strategies to spread the movement, which to me seemed he was even in that mode while taking prasadam. It was just so intense. And actually Lakshmi Moni was cooking, and cooking the sabjis. And after the prasadam, Prabhupada came out, and she had, I think she might have knitted it herself, a chadar. And she handed it to Prabhupada, and he gave her the sweetest smile. And I think that was the first time I learned of severe envy in Krishna consciousness. It was, I saw that she had a deeper loving relationship than I did, that because she did that of her own accord, and it just spurred me on to try to think of how I could possibly, you know, get to that point of seeing the love coming back from Srila Prabhupada like that. So soon after that, we took like a little caravan to Vrindavan, and I had just come for the first time to Delhi, so it would be my first caravan, first time in Vrindavan. And when we finally got there, Srila Prabhupada went to his house, which was practically built, most of it. It was the only structure besides the construction tents. And so in the mornings, we would go to our so-called Mangalartik, which was a table outside of one of the construction tents. And it was very cold and very pure. And I forget the deities of the picture, but it just seemed like a level of transcendence I hadn't experienced before. And then it's interesting, the reverse side of that, when I went once into the construction tent, Tamal Krishna Maharaj was there, and he looks at me and he says, "How much money do you have?" And I said, excuse me? He said, "How much money do you have?" I said, "About like $40. He said, "Give it, it'll buy some bricks." So I felt that, like, you know, we're not in Kansas anymore, you know. But, you know, India has that wonderful dichotomy of being like the wild, wild East, which we experienced, all of us at that time experienced. So what we would do is in the mornings, we were staying at the Fogel Ashram, and we would kind of run through the trees, and because it was like a forest, and there was that pathway to the most exciting time of the day, which was Srila Prabhupada's class. And our dear Ganarnava Prabhu was there, Guru Das, Yamuna, Lakshmi Moni, myself, and a few others. And Yamuna, yes. And so we would go and listen to this nectar from Srila Prabhupada. It felt so intimate. And one day while we're listening, he stops, and he looks up behind us with this huge smile on his face. So we all look back, and who is it but George Harrison and Ravi Shankar? And, you know, they made this kind of grand yet humble entrance. And what struck me is that George went right to the front, right in front of Srila Prabhupada, in like a lotus posture, with his beads out, and was just focused. And Ravi Shankar went into the back, and he left his shades on. And it was just interesting. I don't want to judge anything, but again, the intensity of George's devotion was wonderful to see. And Daivi Shakti Mataji has a photo of George sitting in front of Prabhupada's desk. And he's actually, at that time, he's almost leaning on the desk. And I felt this tremendous closeness between Prabhupada and George, a very special type of relationship. And Prabhupada was speaking more and more, but he actually seemed to adjust his class, saying, we should give everything to Krishna. He said that to George, basically. And so it went on, and then Prabhupada was finishing, and he said to Guru Das, bring prasad for George and Ravi. And George kind of stood up, and he said, but Prabhupada, we want to go see the Yamuna. And just as he said that, in my recollection, he looked over and saw Yamuna Devi, who he had just recorded the Radha Krishna Temple album. And he just, he had this huge smile on his face, and George, he kind of ran over to her and kissed her on the cheek in front of everyone, in front of Prabhupada, in front of, and we're thinking, oh my God, he's kissing, you know, what is that, what's that mean? And Prabhupada, he had an even broader smile on his face. And so we saw, it was so apparent, this like family feeling, this joyful, deep family feeling was there at that moment. And reflecting on this, George left with Ravi soon after to go to the Yamuna. But the reflection I got was that Srila Prabhupada was building a spiritual foundation to the project even before the concrete and rebar foundation was starting. There was just a huge pit at that time with a few pieces of, you know, the wild steel rebar coming out. But, you know, here we were with the Shaktivesh avatar of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, pure Paramahansa devotee, Srila Prabhupada, in the most pure of holy dhams in the three worlds, with the most famous people in the world, among that group, visiting Prabhupada. And we just felt so fortunate and to actually see Prabhupada in action, trying to bring that sweetness and the spiritual foundation into the whole project. It's not that he just came, for the opening. He was staying there many times before, building that strong spiritual foundation. So I just wanted to share that with everyone. Thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much, Satyanarayan Prabhu. He's the sole agent of trying to distribute Srila Prabhupada's books in the Muslim countries all around the world. He has great determination, and hasn't been a very easy service for him. Again, I've been trying to get Srimati here, but we're just as fortunate here. We're going to hear from Arundhati next. She hasn't been feeling good for a little while, but she has a lot of nectar to share. And way back then, some 50-some years ago, I had her association as she would also cook for Srila Prabhupada and her husband. We all know Pradyumna Prabhu. Srila Prabhupada's very famous Panditji. Prabhupada called him Panditji. Anyway, please come up, Arundhati Mataji. And she probably won't tell you that now, but in those days also, at the beginning, the opening of the temple, she was very happily leading kirtans in the temple room. Yes.
Thank you, Srila Kirti, for reminding me of that, because I might have forgotten to say that when I got invited to Vrindavan, I first got invited in 1971, me and my family, Pradyumna and Aniruddha, and we were on our way. Some things got in the way, and I ended up not going. Pradyumna went, but I didn't go then. So then in 1974, Pradyumna, he was Prabhupada's first Sanskrit editor. And Prabhupada took him, he was traveling with Prabhupada from 1972 to 1977. And so Prabhupada had me live in L.A. so that I would see Pradyumna because that was the main place in the U.S., the headquarters. So Prabhupada went there a lot of the time. So whenever he would come, I would transcribe his tapes. So that's what I did from the very beginning. So in 1974, I wasn't doing so well, and I left the temple for a while. I moved to Santa Cruz, California, where a few devotees had moved there. Very beautiful place. So Prabhupada came to L.A. and he asked Pradyumna, where's your wife? How is she? And Pradyumna said, she's not doing so well, Prabhupada. She left the temple. She's living some other place. And I wasn't sure I was going to say this, but she's smoking, Srila Prabhupada, and smoking cigarettes. So I'd fallen into Maya, and Prabhupada said, tell her if she stops smoking, she may come to Vrindavan. And then Prabhupada asked Pradyumna, what does she like to do? And Pradyumna said she likes to chant a lot. She does a lot of kirtan and bhajans. Prabhupada said, tell her she may come to Vrindavan and sing all day in front of the deities. So Pradyumna related this message to me, and I thought, that sounds a lot better than living here in Santa Cruz. And I gave up smoking my cigarettes and went to Vrindavan. And I went there for the opening that was supposed to happen in 1974. And I got sick the very first day I got to India. I came with Nanda Kumar and his wife, and I didn't know anything about what you're supposed to eat and not eat and all that, so I had a mango milkshake and immediately got like really ill. So we traveled the next morning to Vrindavan on a third-class train. Supposed to be 3 people in a seat, but there was 6 people in a seat and people hanging from the luggage racks. It was pretty rough. And then we got on the Tanga from Mathura to Vrindavan. As soon as we entered Vrindavan, you could feel it then. You knew you were in Vrindavan as soon as you entered into the Holy Land there. You just knew you were there. It's transcendental, totally transcendental. And I got to, went to see Pradyumna, who was already there, and he was very sick. Everybody was sick. The place looked like a war zone. I didn't see any temple. I just saw people lying around really ill. And the first question I asked him is, "Where's the bathroom?" He said, "It's over that way. Just make sure you don't fall into any ditches along the way." So it was pretty difficult situation. And then it turned out, that the temple didn't open, so Prabhupada got very sick, just because of all the stress of the temple not opening. People have spoken about that already. I went on Prabhupada sent a lot of the devotees that were there, sent us on Sankirtan to Rajasthan. And Dinanath was leading the kirtan. It was wonderful. We went to Jaipur, Udaipur, and we went up to Chandigarh. So, I'll skip some months, but I don't remember too much specifically from the actual day of the opening, but I ended up living in Vrindavan through 1979, most of the time. In 1976, I went to see Srila Prabhupada in Mayapur. I went to Darshan that a few of us went to talk to him. I gave him a poem that I'd written. It was an acrostic. So down the left side it said, "All glories to Srila Prabhupada." And then it was a poem across each one of those letters. And Prabhupada liked it. I don't know if anyone gave him an acrostic before. But anyhow, at that time, I said, "Srila Prabhupada, I wish that I could be with you always. I wish that I could serve you wherever you are." And Prabhupada just kind of acknowledged my sentiment, smiled. And then many months later, and not that many months, because that was Gaur Purnima. So then in June, I was back in the U.S. Prabhupada was there in L.A. I was complaining about the Gurukula, that my son had been there for 2 years and hadn't learned how to read. And Prabhupada said I could take him out and teach him myself, so I did that. And then we were in New York for the very first Ratha Yatra in 1976, New York City Ratha Yatra down 5th Avenue. And I got invited to Srila Prabhupada. At that time, Radha Ballabha, who was important person in ISKCON Press, invited me, Prabhupada had invited me onto his entourage. And I forgot to mention that from the very beginning when I joined, I was transcribing Prabhupada's tapes right from the beginning. Satsvarup gave me that service to do when I joined in 1968. So all along, whenever I was where Prabhupada was, I'd always be the one that did the transcribing. So in 1976, at this time, Srila Prabhupada wanted to do a lot more translation work than he had done previously. He wanted to really, pick up and get the work done. He wanted to complete the Srimad Bhagavatam. So he decided he wanted a full-time transcriber. And he invited me to do that service. I was very happy. And then somebody said, well, what about her son? She just took her son out of the Gurukula. And Prabhupada said, he may come too. So he was very fortunate. Aniruddha got a chance to travel with Prabhupada for a good year. And I was traveling with Prabhupada for a year and a half, transcribing for him and cooking some of the time. So cooking, Palika was the cook. This is in India now. We were back in India. And I was like thinking, oh, how wonderful it would be to cook for Srila Prabhupada. And I had cooked for him a little bit here and there, and he seemed to like what I made. But I was thinking about being a full-time cook, how wonderful that would be. And then I got the chance, because a few weeks later, Palika, who was a wonderful cook and cooked she cooked often for Srila Prabhupada. She got eczema on her hands. So Prabhupada didn't want her to cook at that time. So he said, teach Arundhati how to cook for me. So as well as the transcribing, I got to cook for Srila Prabhupada. And that was very, very wonderful, because there was the opportunity to, every time you go into the room, to give Prabhupada prasadam, there was something that Prabhupada would say a lot of the time. So I just try to remember a few things that happened in Vrindavan. Like one time I offered him prasadam, and the guest house had been open, and the restaurant had just opened up. So Prabhupada wanted to taste the restaurant prasadam. So he had 2 plates brought to him. I bring a plate to him, and the restaurant would bring a plate to him. And he used to compare. Sometimes he would compare the prasadam. And I just remember one time he said, today your sukta is better than theirs, but their kheer is better than yours. And he often made little comments like that, And Prabhupada had a wonderful sense of humor. So, it was always very light. For the most part, I was pretty lucky that, he did get very angry at me one time. But most of the time, it was pretty light, and he was pretty happy with my cooking and happy with the transcribing. And another story in Vrindavan, I'll try to stick to Vrindavan. Aniruddha, sometimes I'd let him bring something into Prabhupada. So he brought something into Prabhupada one day, and Prabhupada said, so Aniruddha, you're going to be a cook or a Sanskrit scholar? And Aniruddha said, no, Prabhupada, I'm going to be a cowherd's boy. And Prabhupada said, oh, you do not want to be Sanskrit scholar? Your father, he is a very good Sanskrit scholar. And Aniruddha said, no, Prabhupada, I am going to be a cowherd's boy. And Prabhupada laughed. He found it very amusing. So just trying to think. Actually, I wasn't quite prepared to speak today, so I didn't write anything down. But yeah, I was there throughout the time. Prabhupada was, at one time, he was transcribing so much, like all night long, I think maybe he'd be up. And I was typing all day long at certain times, Other times he wasn't well, so he was doing less. But he carried on, and as many of you saw, even, when he was laying on his deathbed, which we hoped that he wasn't going to be leaving us, but he was still working now, and he never stopped. And then I think a lot of you know that he wanted Pradyumna to carry on the translation work, so he had Pradyumna start doing translations, and he would listen to how Pradyumna translated and how he did the word for word synonyms and all that. So that was going on, and then I guess I'm not supposed to be speaking for too much longer, but I was there when Srila Prabhupada left his body, and we were told he was gonna leave that evening. And so everybody at one point was allowed, sometime during the day we were allowed to go and stay in the room. We were just all chanting for Prabhupada all day long. And personally, I really thought Prabhupada was gonna all of a sudden sit up and say, chant Hare Krishna. But he did leave his body that evening. And I'm sure most of you have seen the wonderful movies that Yadu Bara made during that time. So, okay, should I stop or? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
I was with Srila Prabhupada at Bhakti-Vedanta in 1973 for Janmashtami and Vyas Puja. And Srila Prabhupada, of course, made his Vyas Puja address. And in it, he thanked all the devotees, and he especially thanked Pradyumna. He said, actually, he has written Chaitanya Charitamrita, and his wife, mentioned his wife, who was doing all the transcription work. So although it was Prabhupada's Vyas Puja day, he was glorifying his disciples for doing this Chaitanya Charitamrita. I have something, we're going to go in a little different direction. Many of you, my God brothers and God sisters, you're aware of the Srila Prabhupada murti. So this is, Hare Krishna. My name is Shamagora. He's sitting over there he has this bag. They want to give out the Prabhupada murtis, the Srila Prabhupada's disciples here. He has them with them. And he has to meet with me. I'll tell you we have the little boxes, Srila Prabhupada, very wonderful in these boxes, and they're made with the Sankirtan coins from 25 different countries visited by Srila Prabhupada, and they've been melted into an alloy. If you look in the box, in the background, you'll see the jackfruit tree. And this jackfruit tree in the background was made with the dust from the original jackfruit tree under which Srila Prabhupada was born. And there's also a letter in there from Srila Prabhupada to all his disciples that Srila Prabhupada are ready to come back for them from Goloka Vrindavan to take them back home, back to Godhead. All the boxes has your names on it. And these are the names of some of the devotees, at least, who are here. And you can collect them from Shamagora Prabhu. Apurva and your wife Kamalini, Bahushira, Manubhata, Dadibaksha, Vidhi Bhakti Dasi, Dwarkanakaya, Hamsarupa, Rishikesh, Madhava, Mananath, Rathiatra Das, Vaidhi Bhakti, Vidura, and Vijayta Das and Arya Dasi. So if you go over there anytime, sooner the better. He'll find the box. It's a very beautiful murti of Srila Prabhupada. I've seen it. I have mine at home. And as it said, They were made from the coins collected by the Russian devotees, and they wanted to do this very special for Srila Prabhupada's disciples. So it's a wonderful seva they've done, and he's been working on this, I know, for several months, getting these murtis to the different devotees. So it's your opportunity to get one here today. If you're here, you can go see him. And I think it's already 5:30. And of course, we know day 4 is going to be day 4 of Siddhanta Prabhu's memory series. And if everyone's ready, we can, Siddhanta Prabhu, you can come here and we can get that started right away. So thank you all very much for being here. Hare Krishna.
Should wait till these till they get the monkey.
Time, we've got a timeline here. He's been asking for this. He's been asking for this. Yeah, we've been working on this for so long. This was the opportunity.
Okay, no, I'm not. I'm just saying. I might him and haw for a few minutes.
You have that right. I've been hemming and hawing around.
So Hare Krishna. So thank you for coming out for another night of Memories of Srila Prabhupada. We're going to just give a brief introduction while all the devotees are getting their murtis of Prabhupada. So maybe I can see a raise of hands. How many people are here for the first time watching the memories? Okay, less and less. Okay, a few. All right, just as a brief introduction to them, these are stories from the Memories of Prabhupada series that was started in 1991, 35 years ago. Traveling all around the world, trying to find devotees that had personal experience with Srila Prabhupada. These are oral histories, very meaningful. They're educational. Give us an example of how to behave ourselves and how to advance in Krishna consciousness according to Prabhupada's own example, as he is the Acharya. Now, there are some empty seats kind of in the middle here, and these devotees over on the left side, or my right side, you may not be able to see the entire screen. This edge of the stage with the curtains is going to block your vision. So now's the time to find another seat towards the middle if you want to, instead of straining your neck to see the cutaway. Sometimes they have a photograph in the corner of the devotee speaking, giving their interview. So viewers beware. Maharaj. I'm giving you fair warning. There's seats right here in the middle. You're okay. All right. Don't say I didn't warn you. So, how are we doing over there? You're all set? Udavabandhu? Okay. So afterwards, so I just ask you to pay attention to these stories. See how your memory is, because we'll have a raffle of a souvenir, 2 souvenirs to give out afterwards for anyone that can remember at least one story from the 10 or 15 stories that comprise this 1 hour. All right, so thank you for your attention. All cell phones, please turn off or mute. This is a movie theater. We got popcorn, so it's a real deal now, okay? So, Hare Krishna.
Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate.
Start over again. Oh my goodness.
Brahma Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Ite Namani.
And after the initial meeting, John and I had this idea. We were very young and idealistic. So we had an idea that we would do a photo essay about a quaint Indian village and make a cultural presentation that people could appreciate traditional life in India. So we thought this was a wonderful idea. We were beside ourselves with our own brilliance. But the problem was, of course, in India there are thousands upon thousands of villages. And we had no idea which one would be the most suitable for a story like that, a photo essay. So John said, well, Srila Prabhupada's from India, and he's traveled extensively. We should ask him where to go. So we went that morning back to Akashganga, and again into Srila Prabhupada's room. And John presented to him our idea. So Prabhupada looked at us. I'm sure we were flushed with the fervence and of our idea and the enthusiasm that comes with such a young age. And he said, wherever you go, they will simply cheat you and steal your cameras. So from our body language, we must have been crestfallen. We didn't say anything. And there was quite a pregnant pause. And he looked at us. And then he said, best that you go to Vrindavan and do your photo essay in Vrindavan. So some months later we did that, not right away, but maybe 4 or 5 months later. We actually did that. And probably the most remarkable thing about that pastime with Srila Prabhupada is that Srila Prabhupada had only seen me twice, and he knew nothing about me. And unfortunately, I came from an atheistic background. My parents were atheists, and until I went to the temple in New York, about a year or so before I met Srila Prabhupada, I had never been in any church or temple or any sort of religion, not even to see the stained glass. That's how bad it was. So, he, by his instruction to go to Vrindavan, now looking back on that decades later, there was nothing more appropriate he could have said to me, because that month that we spent in Vrindavan was truly transformational for me. I would wander the streets, and everywhere you go, of course, there are temples, and even beyond the temples was the piety and the spirituality of the residents of Vrindavan. Everyone's saying Jai Radhe, and has devotion foremost in their lives. So what can you say? That instruction of Prabhupada could not have been more appropriate.
In Vrindavan, 1972, October, I finally got a chance to see Srila Prabhupada. I hadn't seen him for 3 years because I always kept missing him. When I was down in Trinidad, he was in India. When I went to New York, he had just left New York. When I went to India, he had just left India. So finally, at this time, I got to see him. I remember him walking down the street in Vrindavan and thinking, of course I know that Srila Prabhupada is none different than his picture or his personal form. But I do remember thinking, it's so nice to see him. And we had a big reception at the Radha Damodar temple. And Prabhupada said, this reception, he said, it is not for me. It is for my foreign boys and girls. And he was encouraging us this way. He said, these young boys and girls are helping me. And he said, sorry dear? He said, she is helping me. And then he said, where's your husband? And I said, he's right here, Srila Prabhupada. And he said, why are you so skinny? I said, well, he just got over jaundice. And then Srila Prabhupada said what he should do to help his jaundice. Take some rock candy and put it in a glass of water, and the first thing in the morning drink it, and to boil green papaya. But when he kind of singled me out in this way, after not seeing him for a few years, I knew that he was very pleased by our preaching work. I remember in San Francisco trying to please him by buying him some cloth. I remember trying to buy him a dhoti. I remember knitting him a pair of slippers. And I remember buying him a manga. And in each case, he was not pleased with the gifts I offered. So I knew that my offering was preaching.
You see, Prabhupada just opened the Gurukul in Vrindavan and opened a new building actually. The new building was constructed. The Vrindavan Gurukul was going on. The new building was inaugurated. And Srila Prabhupada was very happy with the new building, and he used to tell people that about the Gurukul building when the people came for his darshan. So one very important businessman came to see Srila Prabhupada from Delhi. He is Jai Dayal Dalmia, one of the biggest industrialists in India. So he came with his 2 daughters-in-law and their children. And he was a very old man at that time, and very nice and pious man actually. So Srila Prabhupada was telling him about the Gurukul education system. And then he asked him to send his grandchildren to the Gurukul. And he explained to him that the modern education system is simply meant for creating Sudras, how to get a good job. That's the purpose of education. But your children, your grandchildren, do not need to get a job, but they should actually become the leader of the society. And that's why he should actually send his grandchildren to the Gurukul. And Srila Prabhupada also mentioned that, see, the Gandhis, Indira Gandhi's sons, Nehru's grandchildren, coming from such a aristocratic family, such a noble family, but look at them, they have become rascals and rogues. And he said that, do you want your grandchildren to become like that? No. Train them up to become the leaders of the society, real leader of the society. And in this way, Srila Prabhupada actually explained. Now later on, I got to know his son, the father of one of the grandchild, and he told me that at that time his father was so convinced that he was planning to send his son to the Gurukul. And I know the son, his name is Abhishek Dalmia. Although he didn't go to the Gurukul, but he keeps a sikha, I mean, the family is very, very pious, and it's unfortunate that he didn't send his son to the Gurukul, but I mean, you can see the potency of Srila Prabhupada's preaching. He is one of the richest men in India, and he was considering to send his grandson to the Gurukul.
I would always make sure, because Pishima trained me like this, that I would always stay very quiet and distant from Srila Prabhupada so I wouldn't disturb him. Because so much of the time we would be in direct contact with Srila Prabhupada in his house, doing the cleaning, doing the cooking, bringing him so many things, making his medicines. So I learned to never disturb Prabhupada in any way. But I saw that a lot of the other devotees, they were able to act in a very open manner with Prabhupada, and were always asking him questions and looked like they were joking with him. So I started to think, well, these devotees, they're so much more advanced than me because they get to have a closer relationship with Prabhupada. And I'm such a fool. Here I am, never asking Prabhupada any questions, just doing my service and being very careful not to talk to Prabhupada. So maybe I should start being more friendly with Srila Prabhupada. So one evening I decided to try it out, and I brought Prabhupada in some sweets, and he immediately saw my change of personality and stopped me right then and there. So the next evening, I knew that I had done the wrong thing, and Prabhupada also let me know immediately that I shouldn't change my mode of service. So the next evening, Prabhupada was sitting in his room with Bhagavad-Gita and another god sister, and Prabhupada started talking to them, and he was telling them that he liked my service because I was always silent and hardworking. So Bhagavad-Gita immediately came out after talking to Prabhupada. He came here to the kitchen, and he repeated to me what Prabhupada had said, not knowing the plan of action I had tried the night before. So Prabhupada was letting me know through Bhagavad-Gita that he appreciated more the fact that I was silent and hardworking in my service instead of trying to become too artificially affectionate with Prabhupada.
In Vrindavan, this was some years later, of course, there was always a problem with ladies, you know, a proliferation of ladies coming to the Vrindavan guest house. And at one point, Prabhupada almost daily was discussing this problem, what to do with these ladies, especially the ones who were without a husband but had children. So sometimes we considered sending them to Mayapur, sometimes sending them back to America, sometimes we said, well, let them stay, or maybe it was an ongoing quandary. Then one day, in the course of one of these discussions, Prabhupada said, on the one hand, we tell all our boys, don't marry, remain brahmachari. On the other hand, we tell all the ladies, you should marry. Every woman must have a husband. He said, this is a contradiction in our philosophy. He began to laugh. He said, it's an insoluble problem. It can't be solved.
I think another significant experience was when I went to India. I was sent to Vrindavan about a year and a half after I joined. And there was a surge of sannyas hype. Everybody was taking sannyas around 1975, 1976. And I remember Gargamuni, after he took sannyas, he came to Germany and he was pointing around at my husband, who was 29 or something, and we'd been married for a year and a half. He said, oh, and you're too old, you should take sannyas immediately. So then I was shipped off to India to assist Hemavati, whose husband took sannyas very shortly after. I didn't know anything about, I was so new in the movement, I didn't know what it means, all this. So anyway, I know Prabhupada came, and he wanted, Hansudev said, yes, I'm determined I should take sannyas here at the Mayapur festival. And Prabhupada said, you cannot take sannyas unless your wife agrees. So he had this meeting, he called Hemavati to him, and he said, now you have to agree, wife must agree, that husband should take sannyas. And so Hemavati would say, but I don't agree that my husband and we are advanced enough to take sannyas. So, but she said, if you give my husband sannyas, Srila Prabhupada, I will accept it. So Prabhupada said, no, you have to agree. You cannot just, I cannot do it. You must agree. No, Srila Prabhupada, I don't agree that my husband is advanced, I are advanced enough. No, but I accept. If you give him sannyas, I will just accept it. So this went on and on for 4 days. They were back and forth discussing it. She never agreed. And still, 1976 at the Mayapur festival, although there was no arrangement in the sannyas arena, Hansudev jumped in, and he was all with his dyed clothes, and he was all ready, and Prabhupada gave him sannyas. So then I was back in Vrindavan waiting with Hemavati, and we had no idea that he was doing this, and she had no idea that he took sannyas. So anyway, the devotees all trickled back from Mayapur to Vrindavan, and as insensitive as we can be, they said, hey, you know what happened at the Mayapur festival? Your husband took sannyas. And she was absolutely hysterical. Hemavati was absolutely astonished because she had not agreed and it was just not expected. So anyway, she was in a rage and she went to Srila Prabhupada when he came after the Mayapur festival, and she stormed in his room and she said, "You know, Srila Prabhupada, now that my husband has taken sannyas, I hate everyone and I hate everything in this material world." So Prabhupada was silent for a few minutes. And after that, he said, "Oh, very good. Now you are making advancement."
I decided I would go out on the balconies of the guest house in Vrindavan and paint trees, landscapes. And I wasn't really thinking of Krishna specifically. But after I did the trees, I decided Krishna has to be here. So I put him in as an afterthought. And I put some boys in. So then I thought the painting was okay. I wanted to show it to Prabhupada. So I finally got an appointment with Prabhupada. I brought the painting in. It was like on a balcony that faced the alleyway there. There's a few balconies up in Prabhupada's quarters. And he looked at it for quite a while, and I was starting to get really nervous. He's looking and he's looking. Finally he said, "What is the idea?" And I started to feel real dumb. And I couldn't say anything. I just said, "Well, Prabhupada, Krishna is playing his flute on the banks of Yamuna, and there's some boys." And he said, "What is the idea again?" He said to me. I said, "Krishna's pastimes are Krishna's unlimited," like that. He said, "Yes, Krishna is unlimited, but you are limited. Stick to the book." And he asked me what verse it was even before. He said, "What verse is it?" And I was like, I'd memorized hundreds of verses, and I couldn't say anything. I said, "Well, there's some descriptions. Somehow or other, he didn't like that painting. There's no way around it." He said, "Stick to the book." And so I just wanted to see, I knew I'd been sentenced, but I didn't know for how long. So I said, can this picture ever be used for books, just to see how much he hated it? He just he didn't say never, he just kind of a non-committal.
The next one was in 74. I went to Vrindavan to see the devotees, see Krishna consciousness, and see Prabhupada. I did not join yet. There was almost nobody there. Just, I remember Brahmananda, Jamuna were there. And I stayed there for like maybe 2 weeks. Prabhupada was there, very peaceful. It was a very peaceful time, transcendental. And I was given the task to take Srila Prabhupada remnants after his prasad. I was sitting on the outside veranda. Prabhupada was sitting outside on his string bed with Kinshana Das, Krishna Das, Babaji Maharaj. He was speaking, laughing together. I was there every day, eating Srila Prabhupada remnants and cleaning his plate and his shower bucket and everything like that. So, Prabhupada called me in, and he asked me what I'm doing. So he told me, you should finish your studies. I was in allopathic medicine. So he said, you should finish these studies and take care of the devotees. So he was concerned with practical matters in this way. And then during the class, he gave. The class was about how the Bhakti-Vedantas gave mercy to the little Narada Muni as a little boy. And he explained that, during the rainy season, that's sage service is to give mercy like that. And Narada Muni, just, humble service, eating the remnants, cleaning their food, listening to that. And he said, just like this young French boy, he got my mercy. So, I feel like, of course, we all got Srila Prabhupada's mercy in some other different ways. But, like many, of course, have no qualification to be a devotee. And as Prabhupada said, he created our pious activities, our qualifications. So for me, that was quite
concrete way to exemplify this fact that Srila Prabhupada, made us aspiring devotees by giving us his mercy.
One of the big problems in those days was visas for Americans. At that time we virtually had no Indian devotees. Some were beginning to join. And 99% of our devotees were American. And they were all having visa problems. Constantly they had to go out of the country and come back. So this was a great source of anxiety to Prabhupada. And he personally met and deputed me to meet people to try and get the Indian government to give us some concession. So I went and saw the Home Minister, the Foreign Minister of India at that time, who was Mr. Vajpayee. And I went to Vajpayee with a plea that some concession be given to ISKCON devotees. And when I came back to Vrindavan that evening and gave Prabhupada the report of the meeting, Prabhupada said, one day this man will become more important. He'll hold a very important position. And a few years later, he became the Prime Minister of India.
Prabhupada had seen a Bhagavad-Gita dance and a Pralambasura dance that we'd done here in Los Angeles, said we must come to India for the opening of the Krishna Balaram Mandir. So when we got to Mayapur, we'd done one drama, and the way the audience was set up, where Prabhupada's Vyasa, we'd end up with our backs to the deities. Now, earlier, we had been told that was not acceptable, that the deity door should be closed, and so we had some argument with the authorities, but since they were GBC, we were just lowly little dancers and actors, we did it. So Prabhupada didn't see the performance, but he saw the pictures. So we were up in his quarters, and he was looking at the photographs of the performance, and he said, oh, back should not be to the deity, and so we tried to, instead of just saying, yes, Prabhupada, we tried to explain that we were told, yes, Krishna is all-pervasive, therefore it was okay if we had our backs to him. Prabhupada got furious. He said, Krishna's all-pervasive? Then you should dance on the roof. He got very animated there.
Another time in Vrindavan, I was serving Srila Prabhupada on a few occasions when he was sickly. And I remember one time in the evening, we would, of course, set up his mosquito net, and he was not feeling well at all. I think that was the first time we had 24-hour kirtan in our movement at that time. So I would massage him in the evenings sometimes with Vicks Vapor Rub, actually. Prabhupada liked when I rubbed that on. So in Vrindavan, we're not supposed to step on even an ant in Vrindavan. You have to be very careful of the living entities there. They are not ordinary. So I'm sitting on Srila Prabhupada's bed inside the mosquito net, but somehow or another, one mosquito got inside the net. So I immediately saw it fly by, and I grabbed for it, and Prabhupada said, no. So I kept massaging. Then the mosquito landed on Srila Prabhupada, and I flicked it away. Srila Prabhupada turned to me and said, now catch it, he is attacking.
So one time in Vrindavan was the time of the mosquitoes. So we all got alert, and we all was told to be very careful, the servants in Prabhupada's quarter, to close perfectly the doors, so we don't want mosquitoes attack Srila Prabhupada. So one time, I will be so careful. So one time, I am coming. So for those who know Srila Prabhupada quarters, many of you, I am coming from his little kitchen by the garden and enter. So on the left there is Srila Prabhupada room, and on the right and straight, you can go in his darshan room. So I am coming. So I am a little after Prabhupada sleeping room, and there come out on my right Arisori. So Arisori blocked me to go, and he started to scream at me. What are you doing? You never close Prabhupada's door. You want Prabhupada to be attacked by the mosquitoes like this. And I was so careful to close the door. So I'm like this, and you go like this, and you are stupid, and scream and scream. So I'm like this. I'm trying to tell him, yes, I promise you, I did close the door. Okay. So, suddenly, I feel such a strong, I don't know how to say English, poignet, hand, such a strong like this, not on my sari, on my hip. One hand is catching my hip, but so strong, and pull me like this. And who is that? Srila Prabhupada. And he come in front of me like this, he put me behind him, and he went to Arisori. So what now? Why are you speaking to her like this? What is this? You should not speak like this to her. And Srila Prabhupada started to defend me like this. And he got so angry. So, the first thing is that Prabhupada touched me. And he defended me. And he always defend the poor, the one who are, women are nothing much. Like that. Oh, that was the unbelievable day, what Prabhupada did. Prabhupada had such a strong strength. You cannot imagine. Such strength.
So one morning I was sitting in front of Prabhupada's quarters, and suddenly Harisori come running out and said, there's one person that one could hear the flute playing somewhere in the guest house. That disturbed Prabhupada. Prabhupada told Harisori to tell me, because I'm the guard outside, go tell him to stop playing the flute. In Vrindavan, there's only one person playing the flute. So I had to go up and tell the guest, but I was a little bit forceful, but I had to tell the guest that flute playing has to be stopped.
But one time in Vrindavan, I don't know if it was recorded. Some of these things were, most of them recorded, but sometimes batteries ran out and stuff. So it was the opening, 1975. So this morning walk, I don't think this first part was recorded. I never heard it when I listened, but so it was the opening, and it was a big mess, And Prabhupada would come out every morning, and he would be telling people what to do. Like one time he took his cane and he was measuring something, and he told them how to fix the gate, and all kinds of little things like that. So out in front, they had built some kind of little, supposed to become a shop, and then naturally some people moved in. So he was telling, get those people out of here, a couple of days in a row. And then one day he asked the temple president, why they're still here? And he said, I told somebody to. The Prabhupada just shouted. I mean, I was scared. He shouted so loud. He said, you stupid, how can I you know, I told you to do it. How can I run the society with stupid people like you? I mean, really shocking that he would talk like that. But then he turned around and he talked to Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and he just said, do you want to hear my theory about the moon? Completely no anger, nothing left over. And he said, of course. So Prabhupada said, the moon is hot fire, he said, but it's covered by a cold atmosphere, therefore the moonlight is cool. What would the scientists say about that? So then Tamal Krishna picked right up on it, because he was experienced, and started saying what the scientists say. He said, you know, this basic stuff. They say it's reflecting the sunlight, it's glowing, and Prabhupada looked at the road, there was a dirt road, he said, why, that's not glowing. And then he said something, and Prabhupada finally said, why aren't you glowing? But he just completely changed. He'd become very jolly and joking.
Another time when we were in India, Prabhupada was actually quite upset because some of his, or one godbrother or some godbrothers were critical of our sannyasis because they didn't speak Sanskrit or they couldn't read Sanskrit. Prabhupada said, where does it say anywhere that one must be able to read Sanskrit to go back to Godhead? Where does it say that? He was quite adamant about this. And he said, my disciples may be, it was at the same time, he said, my disciples may be disqualified in so many ways. He said, but one qualification they have, he was speaking to some Indian people in Vrindavan who were gathered in his room. He said, but one qualification they have, he said, whatever I tell them to do, they will do it. They have full faith in whatever I say. So, I mean, I appreciated the point because compared with the gentlemen who were sitting there, and there were many gentlemen and saintly persons, we certainly were not qualified in so many ways in terms of etiquette. And Prabhupada, in fact, said that. He said, I know often they make mistakes in terms of etiquette. He said, but whatever I tell them to do, they will do. So our good fortune was that we were following the Lord's pure devotee. And, you know, despite all disqualifications, that one qualification surpassed every good qualification anyone else might have.
This was again in 1974, maybe in August, after Janmashtami. Prabhupada was again recovering from his sickness. And we used to cook for Prabhupada, and then after cooking for Prabhupada, we would make something for his servants and secretaries to eat. There were 3 of them that we were cooking for that time. I think it was Brahmananda Swami, Bhagavan, Shrutikirti, maybe a few others. So we would bring that prasadam for them around to the front, and then a servant would come and drop off their plates, and we'd have to wash them all out here in the garden because there was no water in the house then. We'd have to draw all the water from the front well. So I was still in cleaning the kitchen up, and the plates of the servants had been left outside of the kitchen, my not knowing it. And the devotees hadn't finished their prasadam that day, so there was still some remnants on their plates. And Prabhupada came into the kitchen to go to his bathroom, and he saw these plates, and he called me, and he said, what is this? And I saw the plates. Normally I would have taken them and washed them right away. I said, oh, that's a mistake, Prabhupada, I was supposed to clean them. And he looked quite displeased. So immediately Prabhupada walked through his house to the front room where his secretaries lived, and seeing that Prabhupada was displeased, I picked up the plates and came the back way to show Brahmananda what Prabhupada had seen and how he wasn't happy about it. So simultaneously Prabhupada came from one door and I came from another door with the plates in my hands. And Prabhupada called me in and had me show them the plates with the prasadam on it. And he explained to them that no matter who you are, no matter whether you're GBC or anyone, once you touch the plate, whatever is on that plate, you have to finish it because it's prasadam. You shouldn't leave any prasadam on the plate. So Brahmananda, he said, jokingly, he said, but Prabhupada, I had burped. So I thought that after you burp, you couldn't finish it. So, anyway, the point Prabhupada was making, that whatever he said you can take off first. If they've given you too much, before you start, you take off. And that doesn't have to be completed. But whatever you have on your plate when you start, you have to finish that prasadam. So that he was telling to the topmost members of our society, the GBCs and personal secretaries, they had to finish their prasadam. Just like a father, he was instructing them.
The first time I was in Vrindavan, and Srila Prabhupada was there, and he would take his morning walk every morning. And there was a crew of us. I was just a newcomer. I didn't know anything very much at that time about cleaning his rooms. And it was very fastidious. And the girl that was in charge, she knew every little thing, every tiny thing to do. And there was a short time, he took a short walk. So she told me, oh, you can do the upstairs where his little desk is, and sometimes he took prasadam up there. She goes, because that's just the tiniest, smallest little area, so you can do that part. And I was nervous, but she said, all you have to do is the desk. You don't even have to do the floor. Someone else will come do that. You just do the desk, and remember to put everything back the exact way you saw it, and clean it perfectly. So I got up there, and I started getting a little bit nervous because it was like a math problem or something, and I was so nervous I couldn't quite remember where everything went. I took it up, and then by the time it was time to put it down, I couldn't quite remember where it was supposed to go, but I was doing my best, and I was dusting everything, and I was starting to sweat, getting more and more nervous, and there was quite a lot of things on that desk, and I was doing as good as I could, as well as I could, and then at one moment, she said, oh, time, Prabhupada's coming, everyone down. So I had a terrible feeling like I hadn't really had even a good look at what I had done or not done. And I felt incomplete, but anyway, I had no choice. I ran down the stairs, and then I was standing by the side of his room as he went into his room. And I noticed with a terrible sense of shock that he didn't go to any of his downstairs rooms. He went straight upstairs. And then I looked up there, and I could see him going and sitting down at his desk. And within 1 minute, there was this loud, Haribol! Who has cleaned this room? And so Devi Shakti ran up there, and then she came back down and she said, Mula, you really messed up. And I was like, I know, what did I do? And she said, well, Prabhupada noticed immediately that you had put his glass of water in not quite in the exact place, and the little tiny silver cup top that goes on top of his water, you forgot to dust that. So I was amazed at Srila Prabhupada that of all the things that were done in that room, that he had that kind of ability to immediately find that. And ever since then, I've always remembered that standard of cleanliness. And whenever I think I'm cleaning for Srila Prabhupada or for the deities, I remember that, and I know that he's looking and he can see every little thing that might be missed.
One time I was serving Srila Prabhupada in Vrindavan, and as his custom was, after he would give evening darshan, he would distribute prasadam. So as a servant, he would nod, and you would run up, and usually had a jar of sweet balls on his desk. So I came up, he was giving darshan in the evening, Brijvasis were there, so many were there, and he nodded. So I went up, and I opened the jar, and there were ants all over the sweet balls. So I said, Srila Prabhupada, the ants are eating the sweet balls, thinking I couldn't pass them out. Srila Prabhupada looked at me and said, it is okay, they do not eat very much.
At another time in 1976, Gopavinda Pal Prabhu had asked us to guard Srila Prabhupada's door in Vrindavan, which was a great honor to be able to guard Srila Prabhupada's door. At the same time, no one ever thought Srila Prabhupada would come out and say anything or have any conversation. We were rank and file devotees. No big guns, no one who was in a GBC meeting or made any decisions, especially at that time. Rank and file Prabhus. And so Srila Prabhupada was in his rooms in Vrindavan, and it was the time for all the devotees to go to the Fogel ashram for prasadam, 12:30, 1 o'clock. I was sitting on the porch. I didn't know what Prabhupada's rooms were like at that time. Neither did I know if any other servants were there. And all of a sudden there was a buzzer from inside the room. And I kept reading. It was the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. I thought, this is wonderful. I'm in Vrindavan. I'm reading the Bhagavatam. Prabhupada's in his room. He just rang the buzzer. Some servant from somewhere is going to go and take care of it. You know, everything's so wonderful in Vrindavan. And all of a sudden, within a few seconds, Srila Prabhupada was at the screen door, there in his quarters in Vrindavan. And I immediately stood up. I went to offer obeisances, and Prabhupada said, I am an old man, and I am ringing, and you are a young man, and I must come to you? And my heart, I looked at you, Prabhupada, I had no idea. I tried to explain, you know, that I was new to this job. I had no idea what was the rooms. And Prabhupada said, I am the spiritual master, and you are the disciple, and I must come to you? And again, I couldn't even say anything. I was struck. Prabhupada said, I am the master, and you are the servants, and there are 6 of you. I couldn't even understand what Prabhupada was talking about. There are 6 of us. And I must come to you? And then Prabhupada said, go get Pusta Krishna. So I knew Prabhupada went back in his room, and I knew adrenaline was flowing like anything. I had barely ever had any association with Srila Prabhupada face to face. And Srila Prabhupada was, this was one of the first encounters, and I had blown it major. So I immediately was ready to run to go get Pusta Krishna Maharaj at the Fogel Ashram. But I realized that if I left my guard, my post as guard, that something could happen and I would be responsible. So I was waiting for some devotee to come by. One devotee came by. I yelled at him, please come quickly. We've got to get Pusta Krishna. Prabhupada needs him. And unfortunately, he said, no entiendo, Prabhu. He spoke only Spanish. At the time, I didn't speak too much Spanish. And the buzzer rang again. So I ran into Srila Prabhupada's quarters. I had never been there before in Vrindavan. I offered obeisances, and as I'm offering obeisances, Prabhupada said, where's Pusta Krishna? So I immediately stood up before I finished my obeisances because I didn't want Prabhupada to have to wait for my answer. I was feeling very foolish. I didn't know what to do, which way to go, what to say. And I told Srila Prabhupada, he's at the Fogel Ashram taking prasad, and Prabhupada said, go in the back and get one of the other servants. So as I walked in the back, there are 2 doorways. One leads to the back of Vrindavan, Prabhupada's rooms in Vrindavan. One leads to the servants' quarters. And unfortunately, I entered the servants' quarters. And Srila Prabhupada said, no, the other door. And I realized then that one should feel like a fool in front of the spiritual master, but one shouldn't act like a fool before the spiritual master. So I went and I got, Harisari was there in the back, preparing some prasadam, doing some devotional service for Srila Prabhupada. And I told him, Srila Prabhupada needs you immediately, you've got to come quickly, it's an emergency. He said, okay, go around through this little doorway, go around the front again, and keep guarding, and I'll tell you what to do. I'll go take care of everything. I'll go talk to Srila Prabhupada. So I went to my post, and I was still reading the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, but this time my eyes were bugged out of my head. I couldn't even read a word. I was looking at the pages, but my mind was reeling in complete anxiety that I had offended Srila Prabhupada. I hadn't pleased him. What an opportunity. And here I had blown it in service of my spiritual master. So I was actually crying. I think physically I was crying as Srila Prabhupada came out. I offered dandabats on the stairs, 3-4 stairs going to the gate, leading outside to go to Bhagaji's across the alley in Vrindavan. And as I'm offering obeisances, offering dandabats, Srila Prabhupada's coming down the stairs. I didn't even plan it. As I'm coming up, I was crying, my mind was reeling that, Prabhupada, please forgive me. I'm so sorry that I offended you or didn't know how to act properly. And as I stood up, hands folded, Srila Prabhupada looked over and said, Jai, to me. I knew it was to me, Prabhupada said, Jai. And I knew at that moment, all the anxiety, all the fear, all the tears were all washed away. I became completely joyous because I knew that Srila Prabhupada knew my heart. He knew my intentions and that he was forgiving me for whatever offense that I had committed. And then Srila Prabhupada went on to Bhagavad-Gita, and I was in ecstasy for the rest of that day at least.
So we were sitting there next to the cooker. At that point, we had just two, those gas Indian burners had two flames in the gas bottle, and we would make a bucket of coal fire to do his chapatis, because they would come out better on that. Sat down, had the tiffin with all the spices and all the vegetables. Prabhupada sat down. In the meantime, he just kept casually talking to Bhagavad-Gita in Hindi. And so I had the tiffin. He put the spice in, this spice in, that spice in, then this vegetable in, this vegetable in. And he looked at Bhagavad-Gita and he said, so simple, still they cannot do. And then we just sat there and he was chatting with Bhagavad-Gita. And so as he was chatting, Palika was concerned that it was too hot. So she would turn the burner down and he would chat, and he'd look and probably turn it back up. Didn't say anything and chat. And then 3 minutes went by and Palika would turn it down again. And this happened 3 times. And he turned it down. He goes, Hari Baba, why are you messing? So, we kind of just stood back, and then he looked at Bhagavad-Gita and he said, these 2 burners, he said, I can make, he said, in 45 minutes, I can make full prasad for 100 people. Bhagavad-Gita looked and said, impossible. And Prabhupada said, I will bet you, and Bhagavad-Gita said, yeah, khichdi. And Prabhupada said, no, full prasad in 45 minutes. And they started speaking in Hindi then again. And Bhagavad-Gita said, impossible. And Prabhupada said, I will bet you 1 lakh of rupees. And Bhagavad-Gita started to laugh, and he said, Prabhupada, if I win or lose, you will take it anyway. And then he just stood up without another word and said, it's finished. And then he walked out. And the kind of energy just went right back with him, right out the door.
What I was talking to you before we started recording, I was mentioning how when I had jaundice or hepatitis, contagious, it's jaundice that you get from water, basically, or from contaminated food. But in India, it's not uncommon. And I had jaundice, and I went to Srila Prabhupada, and I said, Srila Prabhupada, I told him I had jaundice. I said, so what should I eat? And Srila Prabhupada said, only take Krishna Prasadam. And then I was just, oh, okay, Srila Prabhupada, fine, but what shouldn't I eat? And he said, don't take anything that's not Krishna Prasadam. I just thought, that was like classic Prabhupada, kind of the way he could just answer in the most simple way. But what was there in that answer is Prabhupada's amazing wit, his extremely, dry sense of humor, but very, very deep humor. Like, I remember when we were walking in Vrindavan, and someone said to Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada, these devotees from Los Angeles, they're only taking Ekadasi preparations. And Srila Prabhupada said, oh, advancement. Like that. And then everyone crowded close to him. Advancement, Srila Prabhupada? And he said, yes. And then somebody was trying to play the pundit, says, but Srila Prabhupada, it says in the Bhagavad-Gita that rains come from sacrifice, and grains are produced from rains, and all living entities subsist on food grains. And Srila Prabhupada said, his answer is, he said, very straight-faced, that is for those who are passing 7. So he said, that is for animals. And then, so everyone, that's amazing. You know, so then, when Prabhupada got to Los Angeles, I wasn't there, but I heard the whole thing, and that Prabhupada had said about only animals, basically the summary is only animals need to take food grains. But I thought, Prabhupada's putting them on, and they don't know it. He's just completely playing with them, and they have no idea. And then he went to Los Angeles, and then they said, Srila Prabhupada, these persons, they only take Ekadasi preparations. It was the same references that happened in Vrindavan on the walk. And then Srila Prabhupada said, oh, why is that? And they said, and then they were shocked, and they said, but Srila Prabhupada, they say that only animals need to take food grains. And he said, I take food grains. Do I look like an animal? So, but I was so positive when I heard this incident, and I knew something of Srila Prabhupada. I think Prabhupada's playing with them. He's putting them on, and just in a very straight, way of speaking. They have no idea that he's joking with them. And I saw that. I saw Prabhupada's humor on many occasions, and it's not like a rowdy kind of humor. It's a very philosophical and almost like he could say this, and just very, very wonderful sense of humor. Extremely, charming, witty, everything, but you would not see it in a boisterous way.
When I first met Srila Prabhupada, I was a member of the Namhata party in Japan. And it was in 1975, I believe, and the Vrindavan temple was under construction. And we were collecting for that, and supplying Prabhupada with the funds for the construction of Vrindavan, Mayapur, and Bombay. So one time I had the opportunity, Guru Kripa Maharaj took me along with him to India to bring some Lakshmi to Srila Prabhupada. And this was cash that we had collected in Japan. So we went to Srila Prabhupada's office, and we came in, offered our obeisances to Srila Prabhupada, and then Guru Kripa Maharaj put this briefcase with the money on Srila Prabhupada's desk for him. And I can't remember Prabhupada exactly what happened, Prabhupada opened it or what. At some point, anyway, the amount had to be revealed. So Guru Kripa Maharaj said, there's $108,000 in there, Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada said, thank you very much. 109 would be better. So when it came to matters of Lakshmi to be engaged in Krishna's service, I think Srila Prabhupada was showing us that auspicious numbers are very auspicious, but more is even more auspicious.
So I argued with him daily in Vrindavan. Nicely, I objected. So Prabhupada, they don't want help. The temple presidents don't want me to come in America. They come around their temples, they shun us. The brahmacharis all want to go with us because we're fired up, and it's natural to travel and see the world instead of sit in one place. And the temple presidents don't want the sannyasis coming, and we're living in the van. Like this time I told him when we collected a lot of money. So Prabhupada said, yes, that was such good, you should go do it again. I said, Srila Prabhupada, we are collecting this money 18 hours a day we're working. Srila Prabhupada, 18 hours a day. Our process is 24 hours. So there's no question of getting around it. But this is in that, finally he told me, anasrita karma phalam karyam karotiya, sanyasi, 6th chapter, Bhagavad-Gita, verse 1. A sannyas is he who works as he's obligated, and he's not attached to the result. So actually Vaishnava sannyasi is different, because a Vaishnava generally takes sannyas out of bhava, or love for Krishna. There's nothing to renounce. We already know it is all illusion, it is all the Lord's play. So what we are renouncing? We are only renouncing our illusion. So what is sannyas? But out of ecstasy it is taken for service. But if you're not mature like we were not, but out of to expand this movement, Srila Prabhupada gave many people this position, even if it lasted 6 months or a year, to help other conditioned souls, to do something for some time. That is our good and their good. So he gave instruction like this, to get this money because these temples should be there. And that was the order. And they are still there. Therefore it is a divine, and the collection was successful. It was not done with ego or trying to get on the chart sheet of Rameshwar. It was there for the satisfaction of His divine grace. We did not have our names read in the temple every morning. It was hard, 7 days a week. All the devotees that assisted in that are eternally benefited. But this is our bhakti-yoga process. That Guru is everything. As you get more into this science of bhakti, which Srila Prabhupada came to give, he did not come here to make a personality cult. He came to teach the science of how to see God. Not that he will see and we will not see. You know how he used to say? People used to say, are you seeing Krishna? So the Prabhupada said, so if I am, what good is it doing you? Are you seeing? And I'm eating and you are not eating, what good it is doing you watching me eating? So we have to eat. And he came to give us. And if we do not get it, we are the big loser. We are faithless. If our faith increases to such an extent, we will see Krishna immediately. So that is what he has given us. And as we go with this world is such a big place. But gradually it comes to the devotee that there's only, your vision is this. Only the lotus feet of the Guru is left. Prabhupada's feet is left. Nothing there. But we see he's given that science for us.
Krishna Kirtana Ganana Tanapano Jai Anilo Premadana Karuna Prachu Anilo Premadana Karuna Prachu.
Gurnarnava, are you leaving? Are you leaving? So, Hare Krishna. So these are the memories of Srila Prabhupada. Appreciate you taking the time to listen and hopefully learn some lessons and some memorable anecdotes that are humorous or instructive. Because there was a controversial story there. I would like, perhaps if Hari Sari would like to come up and give his side of that story that Kishori told. So this is an opportunity to tell us that there are two sides to every coin. This is Hari Sari's version.
Well, Hare Krishna. I'm not going to say too much about it. I know that sometimes when you try to recall some incident, devotees tend to exaggerate a little bit so that the story that they're narrating has more punch to it. And all I can say is that I did sometimes chastise devotees for doing silly things. It may have happened that I had some occasion to chastise Kishori for leaving the door open for the mosquitoes. But I can say that there's no question of me screaming in Prabhupada's quarters, screaming at Kishori whilst Prabhupada's standing there. There's no question of it. So all glories to Kishori Mataji. She's got a lot of pious credits for her service, but don't rely on everything that somebody says. We were all there to serve Prabhupada, and my job as the servant was to make sure that Prabhupada was being properly looked after. But in Prabhupada's presence, screaming, no, sorry, it didn't happen. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. That sounds very plausible, and I accept that. So let's give Hari Sari a round of applause for all of his service he performed for Srila Prabhupada. Took care of him. So that cannot be denied. So we have these two door prizes. We have 10 minutes left here. I'd like to do a little Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam portion of the procedure here. Let's see if any women or men can raise their hand if they have a story from this collection that we just saw. Not a new story, but one story that you heard here tonight that was memorable and meaningful to you, and why. All right, Apurva. Hold on, Preetu, hold on. We have one woman and one man. So please sit down if you're not up here, okay? Please sit down for a sec. Apurva.
Yeah, this was a very important instruction. It's the story of a story that was given regarding the sannyasis, or I guess it was one plate of prasadam that still had prasadam on it.
You talk, I'll hold it. I'll hold
Yeah.
it. I'll talk, you talk, and I'll hold it for you.
Okay. So there was prasadam left on the plate of, I guess it was Brahmananda. And Prabhupada made a very strong point that you look at your plate. If you see that you have too much, take it off first and then take prasadam, and you can maybe take more. But he was showing not only that we waste, but we shouldn't waste, but we shouldn't contaminate the prasadam. And this is a very important instruction that needs to be broadcast in our communities. So I'll never forget that one.
Great. Thank you for sharing. You get the door prize number 1. Now, I would like to hear from a lady. Okay, can you come up, please? That was Apurva, and here we have, please tell us your name.
My name is Divyamra Devi Dasi, and the story I like is from His Holiness Vishakha Devi Dasi, and he was coming to Prabhupada and wanted to do some picture shoots in a village in India, and she asked Prabhupada, where shall I go? And Prabhupada answered, you go to Vrindavan. And she was looking okay. And when she came to Vrindavan, she really appreciated Prabhupada's idea, and it really transformed her life. And it's a transformation for her.
Vishaka. Right. Thank you very much. You win door prize number 2. Now, I don't have another book, so Preetu, quickly we have... Okay. While Preetu comes up, here's our glorious leader, Panchagoda Prabhu. How about a round of applause for the organization that he has established here?
Thank you. It's been a wonderful opportunity to all be together to hear about Vrindavan, Srila Prabhupada, and all the devotees' valuable services. So we have one donation on behalf of Jai Pataka Maharaj. Someone's going to give dhotis to all the Prabhupada Prabhus and saris to all the Matajis, okay? And they're going to just, I don't know if it's going to be a pick and choose type thing, but at least do it quickly. You can give the dhotis on this side, saris on this side, and this on behalf of Jai Pataka Maharaj. They want to honor you. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Jai. All right, this is Preetu Prabhu. Let's hear just a moment his the story that he reflects on the most.
Hare Krishna. When Prabhupada came to Germany, I got a phone call from...
Wait a minute. That's not the assignment. The assignment is to tell one story that you heard tonight that was meaningful to you.
That I cannot do. I wanted to tell the story what Professor Durr is famous.
Okay. Okay, he's going to go off on a tangent here, but it's going to be a very relevant story.
So we got a phone call that we should meet, Prabhupada would meet Professor Martin Heidegger. Martin Heidegger is the most famous philosopher of the last century. He's an icon. If you study philosophy, you have to study Heidegger. So I went down there, found out where he was living, and rang the bell in my dhoti, and an elderly lady came out and said, "You look very strange." I said, "Yes, I follow a spiritual culture of India." She said, "Why did you come?" He said, "My spiritual master, my mentor wants to speak, Professor Heidegger." She said, "It is too late." I said, "Why? Is he gone?" "He's upstairs." I said, "Then can I see him?" She said he does not understand anything anymore since years. So I said, he won't complain either. So I went. And I was sitting at his head, his wife at his feet, and I said, "Professor Heidegger, can you hear me?" No reaction. I said again, "Professor Heidegger, can you hear me?" No reaction. I took Prabhupada's Bhagavad-Gita and touched it to his hand. And he grabbed the Gita. He opened his eyes and he looked at the cover and said, "Bhagavad-Gita." He said, "I know this book, I know this book." And he became very emotional and pressed it to his heart. His wife stood up and said, "How did he do this? I have not seen him like this since 8 years. And I said, "I don't know." It was a pure mercy of Prabhupada, because in his last interview he said, "Only God can help us to save the world." That pious credit brought him that Prabhupada woke him up from a deep sleep of Alzheimer for seconds to reveal Prabhupada's power, Prabhupada's glory. It was a very mystical experience.
Thank you. Jai. Good story. All right, we have just 4 minutes here. I just want to remind everyone that the latest collection of Prabhupada memories from over 80 devotees has been put together into Memories Volume 6 that can be obtained over at this book table over here for 500 rupees only. And if you do buy one of the souvenirs of Volume 6, that you'll automatically be put down on the list of devotees who will then receive the 6 videos that we are broadcasting this week as a further souvenir. No charge, free of charge to all those that decide to donate to the project of following or carrying on Prabhupada's legacy. You'll receive the 6 videos that have been played this week. So that's right over there. In any case, thank you for your attention. Tomorrow at 5:30, we will have one more, and then on Sunday, the concluding collection of Prabhupada memories. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Now we will have a play, evidently.